Welcome to episode 2 of the Lifestyle Health Podcast. In this episode, I interview James Oliver. James is the founder of Atlas Bars and Anti-Chocolate. James has a passion for healthy living and focuses on making healthy food more accessible through his entrepreneurship. He founded Atlas to create healthy, ketogenic protein bars and Anti to produce sugar-free chocolate chips. He holds a bachelor's in economics from Tufts University, is from Massachusetts, and currently lives in New York City. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm here with James Oliver. James, thanks for hopping on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So I want to just jump right into it and kind of hear the story of Atlas.
Like many, I was trying to just solve a problem for myself first and foremost. And the problem that I was trying to solve is create a way to have nutrition that's convenient, portable, shelf-stable, good ingredients, and good nutrition. And I couldn't find something that checked all of those boxes. And this is a general, I think, tension with a lot of foods is either foods have good nutrition, but they might not have the best ingredients, meaning they have good protein and maybe low sugar and things like that, but they use more synthetic ingredients to achieve that, or they use more wholesome ingredients, but they might not have the best nutrition. They might be higher in sugar because they're using honey or dates or whatever. And it's hard to come up with a product that can do both, that has both clean ingredients and hits nutritional targets that certainly I was looking for, but that people are looking for. So I was, looking for something. I wasn't looking to start a bar company at all. I was just looking for something for myself. And I was going to China for 6 months, and I made a bunch of these, brought them with me, and I got back and thought that it was worth taking a shot at turning this into a product that I could share with others and see if there was demand for it. And there was, and now we've sold tens of millions of them. So the original idea has virtually been the same. And though that was a number of years ago, we're now seeing this shift, I think, across the board into more of this like better for you foods.
Mm-hmm.
Across, like you see it across every category, whether it's ice cream or chips or candy, whatever. Like there's this kind of tidal wave of new brands that are really just taking the existing foods that people like and doing this cleanup of the ingredients and the nutrition.
Yeah, there certainly seems to be like a sort of proteinification of everything in the last few years. That's kind of interesting. And my next question, you kind of touched on it a little bit, was, I guess, like, how did you go from there being no bar to, having a first like kind of test product? It sounds like it, you kind of made it for yourself. And my understanding is that you also, part of the reason you started the company was to have a sort of a keto, option, right? So were you kind of doing the keto diet and like thought you were gonna have a hard time sticking to it when you went to China, so you brought along your own sort of keto? Is that part of it, or?
Initially, it wasn't specifically for keto, but based on how it was created with higher fiber and lower sugar and all of that, it ends up being keto aligned. And a lot of consumers, they initially were attracted to it when keto was more in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped with adoption because it was one of the very few that was keto aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Now the keto's not many people do it anymore because it's very hard to do. But to answer your question directly, I think people might overestimate how hard it is to actually start to like create a product. It's easier now than ever before to create. Like it's really just a Google search. You just search now, I guess AI, you can just, if you're looking to create a popcorn, you can just search like either popcorn manufacturers or formulators that have created popcorn before, and you're going to have to spend some time looking through them. But then it's just a matter of reaching out to them and seeing if they're willing to work with somebody who's on the smaller side. Because a lot of the times, though it's not necessarily thought of this way, these manufacturers, a lot of the times they'll do the development for you. And sometimes you'll have to pay for it, sometimes you don't, but they make money if you grow. And so they almost look at you as if an investor might look at you, because they are investing resources into developing something for you. So say that they're like, oh, this guy Luke, he has this idea for popcorn, and I think, I don't know, talking to him, it seems like he has a good idea, good angle, and I think that we should devote some resources to helping him, because say that he is able to scale it and get some distribution, then that could be some good business for us. So that's how they're thinking of it. And once you know that, then it's really not as intimidating as it might seem to find somebody who can one, manufacture your product, but also help you create the initial prototype.
Interesting. So you didn't have much of you kind of went from figuring out the ingredients and stuff yourself to going right to the first batch out of a factory. Is my understanding correctly?
Yeah, I remember thinking early on, because you need to make this choice. It's a binary choice. It's either you have to manufacture the product yourself, or you have to find somebody that manufactures it for you. And you can do it both ways. Like, companies of all sizes do it both ways. Nike has never manufactured a shoe in their life. They outsource all their manufacturing. So some of the largest companies don't manufacture anything. And I made the decision early on to, like, I'm not a manufacturer, and if I think that would be a very intensive thing to do, to spend all of my time trying to figure out how to scale manufacturing and figure all those things out. So why don't I find somebody who can take this formula and who can manufacture it well, and then I can focus on the sales and marketing and positioning and growth of it. And so I made that choice early on to not go the self-manufacturing route, and to instead find a manufacturer that could scale the manufacturing of the product for us.
Nice. Interesting. I feel like I could ask you probably 1,000 different questions about all that.
You're welcome to. I'm here to answer them.
I guess one thing that I'm curious about is, like, there must have been. I mean, you have to get the nutrition facts and sort of follow the different FDA regulations before you can make those first sales, right? So there's kind of a big hump to get over. Like, did you have to get investors right off the get-go, or did you kind of just bootstrap it yourself? How was that kind of first?
Yeah, no, I bootstrapped it myself, and you don't, again, I will say that in this day and age, it's both easier than ever to start something, but also harder than ever to start something. And that seems counterintuitive, but the reason that it's harder than ever to start something is because it's easier than ever. And what I mean by that is that the barrier to entry is so low. Like, right. It's so easy to start something that there's now a proliferation of brands. So there's a lot more competition, which means that while it's easier to start something, competing is harder because there's a lot more competition than there was just a decade ago. So a lot of the times, if you find the right person, whether it's manufacturer or food formulator, they will help. And that'll be part of it. The nutrition facts, the ingredients, all of the required statements, weights, all of those things will be done. They don't just make a product and then throw it at you and say, here you go. But I would, in the beginning, I didn't raise any money. I didn't take any outside funding for 2 to 3 years. And at that point, we were already doing over $1 million in sales annually. So it was bootstrapped. And I would probably, again, it's now easier. I started a couple of years ago, but today, if I was starting again, I don't think that any funding would be necessary at all with all of the different tools that are available.
Mm-hmm. And how did you make those first sales? I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started this kind of your last year of college. Were you selling on campus or? Yeah,
initially so the way that I kind of proved product market fit or some version of it before actually having a product was I just cold emailed a bunch of gym owners, and I just described the product conceptually to them. And I just said, hey, if this were a I think that I positioned it saying I was doing a project for school, because I figured that would make them more likely to respond. And I got a bunch of responses, but I just described it in like a Google survey. And the question that I asked 2 questions. One, would you be willing to purchase this? And 100% of the respondents said yes. And then I also asked like, how much would you be willing to pay? And there was like a little slider. And I think the average price was like $2.70. And I was like, all right, so this is like, this isn't just in my head. There's actual, after describing this to people, there's actual interest in this. And so once I actually made the product, I went back to those people and I was like, well, I now have the product. And I basically just contacted them and asked if I could go to their gyms and sample the product just to get some initial feedback from their customers to see if people actually liked it.
Nice. How has it changed over the years? Like in terms of, I was kind of looking up some older information on the company. It sounds like there used to be more flavors. There used to be kind of a mental health aspect with ashwagandha, which for the audience is an herb that helps with mood and stress that you guys decided to take out of the product a few years ago. Tell me a bit about how things have evolved.
Yeah. So while the core value proposition has been the same, and it's a good question, there are things that ebb and flow in terms of consumer interest, and you have to react to those. So an example would be like keto. So if there's a movement around keto, which is really around like low carbs, then you probably want to emphasize the fact that your product is like aligned with keto. It's lower carb. There's also paleo, so you probably want to focus more on the ingredients. Right now there's protein, so you probably want to emphasize the protein. And so you basically you try to meet people where they're at and what they're specifically looking for. Fortunately, because Atlas has created the way that it is, which the way that I would describe it is built on like nutritional principles, things that are really not going to change over time. Like people will always, I think, prefer, all else being equal, they'll always prefer more wholesome ingredients to more processed ones. So Atlas has we have a lot of optionality in terms of what we want to emphasize because there's so many good traits around it. But yeah, there are definitely some changes that we made. So initially ashwagandha wasn't initially in the product. I think in 2019 or 2020, I decided to add it in because I was thinking, well, if we add this in, it'll only add more value because we're adding something on top of what the product already delivers. What I underweighted was the fact that anything that you add in or anything that you say, it dilutes your message about the product, because if you're trying to say two things instead of one thing, then those two things are going to land with less weight than the one thing that you choose to say. So after doing a bunch of research and after having it for a year or so, and I think I talked to like 50 or 60 of our customers on the phone, I asked all of them, I was like, well, out of all the options, why is Atlas the one that you choose to go with? And there wasn't a single person that said that ashwagandha was why. So I was like, all right, well, it's clearly not like it's clearly not delivering a lot of value for our consumers. It's not the number one reason that people buy it. So while I don't think it was detracting or alienating any consumers, I just don't think that it was adding anything. And so basically I was like, all right, well, let's take it out and then focus on the things that our consumers actually communicated were the most important aspects of the product. So that's what we did.
Nice. I'm curious, kind of shifting focus a bit from, I guess, the product and how things started. I'm curious how you always kind of hear like how tough it is to be an entrepreneur and how people never really know what they're getting themselves into. So tell me a bit about how you navigated this. That this was your first company, right?
Yeah.
And did you have, I guess, any mentors to turn to, or like, I guess, how was your experience like in that regard?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think the hardest part about entrepreneurship is the uncertainty of it. I think that's probably what deters more people than anything else. And the way that people describe it, that's clear. Like people are like, should I take the leap? Should I take the jump? It seems like if you were to leave like a steady job and try something, you're like jumping off a cliff or you're doing something like very, very wrong. And I think that's because our our minds, they really like a cohesive narrative. They're narrative machines. And when you're in a structured career path, then it's like clear. You're like, all right, well, I do this and I'm an associate, and then I'll be promoted and I'll be a senior associate. And it's very clear what those sequential steps are. But when you're a entrepreneur, you're making your own path. You don't have that same script written out in front of you. So I think the hardest part is trying to figure out the script to write. And I think, I did have mentors. Again, fortunately, the time we live in, I had both physical mentors that I talked to, but you can also basically absorb all of the information from virtually anybody in human history, living or dead, due to the internet. And there's just so much information out there. Like at any point in time, you can listen to the most successful people in a given field for hours, because there's just so much content available. So the information is out there. I think the limiting factor for most people now is taking the step and actually doing it, because it's really not as scary as it seems. I think it's easy to build things into like mountains, make mountains out of molehills in your head. But as I said, it's really like you could tomorrow call up a manufacturer if you had an idea for, I don't know, like, I'll just use popcorn again. If you just want to make a popcorn, and you could just call up like 10 manufacturers and talk to them and see if it could be done. It doesn't have to be this enormous like leap of faith, or you don't have to like post on your social and announce that like I'm starting a company. You can just try it and see. I think a helpful framework that I use is thinking like a scientist and using like hypotheses, and just be like, okay, I have a hypothesis that this might work. Let me test it, see if that hypothesis is valid. If not, I'll just kill it and move on. But if it is, then I'll keep going.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool. That kind of transitions nicely to curious how you started what is now your second company, Anti. Yeah. Did that kind of just start with a hypothesis and
pretty much
calling some manufacturers?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly how it started. So yeah, I use that system that I described. It's not theoretical. It's the exact one that I use, where I think that there's an opportunity for a zero sugar, clean ingredient chocolate. And I knew a manufacturer that could help us create that. And so, like I said, I had this hypothesis. I spent like $360 on the design of the initial packaging, and a couple, maybe like $2,000 or $3,000 on the inventory. And then we started selling it, and very quickly that hypothesis was confirmed, and it actually became the fastest growing product that the company has ever launched. But the initial downside, like if you just draw out what the worst case scenario is, you're like, okay, worst case scenario, I'll still probably be able to sell through this. So like worst case scenario is I just break even because I invested this couple $1,000 and I'll be able to recoup the investment. And best case scenario is you could create a multi-million-dollar product line, which is the way that things are looking that they're going. So I think thinking in those terms, thinking like asymmetric terms, it's I think a framework that a lot of successful like poker players use too. Like if the worst case scenario is I lose $1, but the best case scenario is that I gain 20, then that's a pretty good trade. And so that's kind of how I try to think.
Nice. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but so anti chocolate, that's the branding, right? That's still part of the Atlas company. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's in the same, it's a separate brand, but it's in the same company. So I guess it's similar to, you have like Pepsi that owns both Gatorade and Quaker Oats. So two different brands, but in the same company.
They own so many things. It's kind of crazy if you look into it.
Yeah. There's one graphic that shows like, I think it's like 5 companies and all of the like children brands, and there's like hundreds of them, and you don't realize until you look at it how like half the grocery store is owned by like 5 companies.
Yeah. I'm curious, are those the chocolate chips that are used in the Atlas bars too, or will they be as you scale up with Anti? Or
yeah, there's good synergies between the two. So it's the same chocolate that is in Atlas is very similar to the chocolate that we have with Anti. But yeah, it's turned out to be a pretty good initiative, and I've been very surprised at how I thought that it would do well, but I didn't think that it was going to get the response that it has gotten. But part of the challenge with chocolate is if you're trying to sell it year round direct to consumer, it's like currently 90 degrees and it doesn't do too well in 90-degree heat. So you gotta figure out how to do that, which we're actively working on.
Yeah, I just took a look last night to see if I could buy some. It looked like it's currently sold out, huh?
Yeah, so we technically have the inventory. So we have a good amount of inventory right now, but I'm just waiting to get our cold chain meaning the infrastructure behind it set up so that we can fulfill orders to people across the country and they won't arrive in a melted mess.
You gotta deliver with refrigerated freight.
Yeah, you have to deliver with ice packs, with insulation, with 2-day shipping. So like all of the things stack on top of each other and make it much more expensive, because not only do you have to do expedited shipping, but you have to do expedited shipping with specialized packaging and with ice packs in there. So you're shipping something that's heavy and like bulky, and you're shipping it fast. So you just have to make sure that the cost works out and that people are willing to pay for that, because it's much more expensive in the summer for customers.
Yeah, interesting. So I want to talk a bit about, I guess, podcast is lifestyle health and kind of get a sense of your own sort of philosophy of health, your own perspective. You know, it's pretty clear to me that you came into the health space with really good intentions, and I'm kind of curious, like, where that started. You kind of alluded to it a bit, that the company was started because you wanted to have something, you know, for yourself. I guess what kind of got you interested in nutrition and well-being to begin with? Was it like are you a runner? That's one kind of a side question I have. Or were you training for things? Or kind of how did you get interested in all these things?
Yeah, the earliest memory that I have is when I was very young. I think I was 4 years old, and I remember one of my parents said to me that eating carrots improves your eyesight. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. I just thought it was the coolest idea that by choosing what you're ingesting, you can like upgrade your body. And
Yeah.
I also played a lot of video games, and it reminded me of that. And I was like, that's very cool that just like you're leveling up like a skill tree for a video game character, you can, and it's not like a complete one-to-one comparison, but it's not that different. Like by choosing to run every day, you can increase your endurance capacity. By choosing to lift weights, you can increase your strength. By choosing to read, like if you think about it like almost like a skill tree, it does map a bit closely to it. So I always was very fascinated by that with food, and by how choosing to consume different things, you could more or less change how your body functioned. And I thought that was very cool. I also was in a lot of athletics. I played a bunch of different sports when I got to college that transitioned more towards things that allowed me to really test my own limits, and that led to more endurance sports. It's funny, I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as a runner, but I tallied it up a couple months ago, and I have done like over a dozen ultra events, but I never thought of them like that, because I would just go 30 or 40 or 50 miles, but I never like thought that, oh, this is like an ultra event.
Just like recreationally, not as part of a...
Yeah, well, it started because I was a big hiker when I was growing up. So I was in the Boy Scouts, and through that we did a lot of hiking. And then me and my brothers would do these more strenuous hikes where we would hike like 20, 30, 40, 50 miles. And when you start to do like ultra events, a lot of them, the line between like an ultra event and a long hike is like pretty blurry, because a lot of times if you're doing like a long ultra, you're really not running the majority of the time, especially if there's a lot of elevation. So when I first did like an actual ultra event, I was like, oh, I've kind of been doing this for a while. This is just like the kind of hikes that I would do, just at a slightly faster pace. So yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't describe myself as a runner. I just kind of use that as a way to push myself to the limit, just to see. I was just curious to see how far my body could go.
Yeah, nice. And so you're from Massachusetts, right? Did you grow up hiking a lot in like more rural areas of Massachusetts, or you travel further?
Yeah, New Hampshire. Massachusetts, not a lot of elevation in Massachusetts, but New Hampshire, also not a ton. Like the highest mountain in New Hampshire is Mount Washington. It's like 6,000 feet, which when you go out west, 6,000 is, you might be like lower than Denver on the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
But
I'm from Michigan, so we got nothing. So.
Yeah. So the terrain itself is not that, is like the total elevation gain is not that much, but the elevation is it's pretty gnarly compared to, again, out west is a little bit more gradual. It's more like gradual walking paths, whereas in the Northeast, it's very, you're just basically going up like stairs for like thousands of feet. So yeah, that's where I cut my teeth with hiking.
Nice.
Yeah.
And now you're living in New York City.
I am.
Do you find that tough? Do you, I guess, drive up to the upstate very often, or?
Not that often. I don't know. I'm a person that likes extremes, so I like either being in, if I'm going to be in a city, like I want to be in
a big city.
The city. Yeah. Like when I went abroad, I went to Shanghai because I remember seeing this very cool picture that shows it's from the same vantage point. It shows Shanghai in like 1990, and then it shows it 20 years later in 2010. And in 1990, it's like literally a fishing village. It's crazy. And then in 2010, the skyline looks indistinguishable from like New York. And I was just like, I got to go to like, how did this happen? I got to go see what this place is like. So I think Shanghai, I don't know what it is now, but it's definitely in the top 10 largest cities. But I was just like drawn to it for that reason. I was like, this is so extreme, and I just gotta go see what's going on there.
Yeah, no, that is a fascinating story of development for sure. I've kind of seen those side by side photos that you're talking about. Oh, I just remembered, actually, this is kind of coincidental, not planned, but I have a shirt with Atlas on it, and I cycle through my t-shirts, and it just so happened to be at the top of the pile today.
What is that? Is that shirt like a reference to anything, or is that just a random Atlas shirt?
Yeah, no, it's based on a figurine little statue sort of thing in the Royal Palace that's in Madrid.
Oh, cool.
My brother lived in Madrid for a few years and visited him and toured the palace there, and I thought it was a cool shirt. So.
Nice. Yeah. But, a lot of people, they ask me, because when you hear Atlas, I think the main response, most common one, is you think of like a book, like a world atlas, like map, because that's what a lot of people associate it with. But some people, they got the reference. Yeah, some people know. Yeah, the origin of it was similar to Nike. Nike is the Greek goddess of victory, and most people don't know that. You only know that if you've like looked into it. But I always thought that there's that cool underlying meaning to it, and so I took a page out of that book and took Atlas from Greek mythology as well.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it still holds true, but apparently if you have a company starting with an A, it might help in some ways too for alphabetical reasons. But yeah. All right, cool. I want to do a bit more of a speed round towards the end here. What's something you've changed your mind about?
This is not a controversial one, but that it's not all about hard work, and that's a hard thing for somebody to absorb. But depending on the outcome you're looking for, like, you could work very hard at the wrong thing and still end up not where you want to be. And similarly, you could like kind of half-ass working on the right thing, and you're going to get further than somebody who works really hard on the wrong thing.
That's good advice. Tea or coffee?
Gotta go coffee. Coffee black.
Okay, nice.
You don't get the same buzz from tea.
That is true. What do you think is the best 15-minute workout?
Best 15-minute workout. In terms of efficacy, I would probably say I used to do a combination of pull-ups and burpees where you basically like alternate between the two. It's really hard to do that for even a couple of minutes. Burpees are probably like one of the best full body exercises. It's hard to do burpees for like 2 minutes, let alone 15.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. I should probably do some more burpees. I was going to ask you if you're a runner. Kind of talked about that. I guess what's the longest ultra you've done?
A bit over 50.
Where was it?
Two of them. One of them was in New Hampshire, and one of them was in New Jersey.
Nice. Any ultras coming up?
No. The ones that I enjoy doing the most are like I did a loop of Manhattan twice, where you just run around the entire perimeter of the city. I like doing it in like more unstructured events, so like doing it in daily life more than structured events.
Nice, that's cool. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why? Sounds like you've traveled a lot, but I guess maybe somewhere you haven't been.
I haven't been to Japan in a while, so I think Japan, and I think because the duality of the culture is very, very interesting, where they have a very kind of structured culture, but also a deep appreciation for like the fluidity and like beauty, which is it's a duality that you don't often see in many cultures.
Yeah, Japan's definitely up there for me too. What aspect of well-being are you currently focused on improving or just exploring, learning more about?
I mean, I think sleep is something that I definitely prioritize a lot more now than I did. I have an 8 sleep, use an eye mask, all of those things. It really makes a big difference. I used to get up, like when I was starting the company, I would get up at like 4 a.m. And as to my point on the working hard, you don't necessarily have to grind, despite what the YouTube videos say like that, in order to get where you want to get to.
Grind slop is a term
Grind slop.
Recently. I don't know if you've heard that.
I mean, yeah, you can just throw slop as a suffix to any word, and it works.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Besides obviously telling the audience to check out Atlas Bars and Anti, which we'll plug there for you, what's one thing you'd like to for the audience to take away from this episode, if there's anything we haven't talked about, or just any sort of message you have?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've said a couple of times, but I think the perceived difficulty of something or the perceived barriers are oftentimes much harder or much worse than they actually are, meaning that if you're looking to start something or do something, the first step is really not that difficult to do. And if you take that first step, you'll see that a lot of the reasons that I was telling myself were actually really just kind of illusory and not real. And that you see this, I think, more in online culture now, of basically just like that phrase of like, you can just do things. And it's true. You can just do things. You don't need permission from anybody to do anything. You can just start.
Nice. Great advice. James Oliver, thanks for hopping on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Lifestyle Health Podcast.
Nice!